When we hear the phrase literature review, most of us immediately think about summarizing previous studies. We open Google Scholar, download 50 PDFs, read them carefully, and then try to include everything we've learned into our manuscript. But here's the truth. A literature review is not about showing how much you have read. It is about showing what is still missing. Today, I want to share a powerful way to think about literature reviews, something that completely changed how I write research papers. Instead of thinking about a literature review as a summary, think of it as mapping a gap. Let me explain. Many students approach the literature review like a report. They list study after study. This researcher found this. Another study showed that. A third study suggested something else. The result becomes what we call a laundry list of facts. It may be informative, but it is not persuasive. It does not tell the reader why your research is necessary. And that is the real purpose of a literature review, to create the need for your study. Imagine your research field as a map. Every published study paints part of that map. When you describe previous research, you are filling in sections with color. But here's the key idea. You should not paint the entire map. If everything is already known, then there is no space left for your research. Your job is to carefully paint enough of the map so that one clear white space appears, a visible gap in knowledge. That white space is where your research fits. A strong literature review guides the reader toward that white space. By the end of the section, the reader should naturally feel, yes, something important is missing here. This study needs to be done. So how do we do this effectively? One powerful strategy is to structure your review around what we call knowledge claims. Instead of randomly summarizing articles, you build logical steps. For example, you might say, research has shown that poor communication affects team performance. Then you build on that. Studies demonstrate that training improves communication. Then you move further. Educational programs are increasingly incorporating teamwork training. Each paragraph presents one knowledge claim, one piece of established understanding in your field. But here comes the most important word in academic writing. However. That however signals the gap. It tells the reader that despite everything we know, something remains incomplete. Maybe previous research focused only on co-located teams and ignored distributed teams. Maybe scholars have studied outcomes, but not lived experiences. Maybe a dominant theoretical perspective has overlooked alternative frameworks. When you organize your literature review in this way, you are not just reporting knowledge. You are building an argument. You are showing how the field has developed, where its limitations lie, and why your research is the logical next step. Another important insight is that not all gaps are the same. Sometimes the gap is simple. No one has studied this specific relationship before. Sometimes the gap is methodological. Researchers have relied only on surveys, but not qualitative exploration. Sometimes it is theoretical. One perspective dominates while others are ignored. And sometimes it is a controversy. Scholars disagree. And your research helps clarify the debate. To identify and characterize the gap clearly, you must understand the literature deeply, not just each paper individually, but how papers relate to one another. When you read, don't only ask, what did this study find? Ask also, how does this connect to other studies? What is still unanswered? What pattern is emerging? And here is something very important, especially for graduate students. Do not use your literature review to prove that you have read everything. Academic writing is not about displaying effort. It is about being strategic. You do not have space to summarize everything, and you do not need to. Your readers are already part of the scholarly conversation. What they need from you is clarity and direction, not an encyclopedia. Think of your literature review as gravitational. Every paragraph should pull the reader closer to the gap. By the final paragraph, the white space should feel obvious, important, and urgent. When you write your next literature review, ask yourself these questions. Am I just summarizing? Or am I mapping the gap? Have I clearly shown what is known? Have I clearly shown what is unknown? Have I characterized the type of gap? Does my gap logically connect to my research question? If you can answer yes to those questions, your literature review will not just inform, it will persuade. And that is the difference between an average manuscript and a strong one. If you found this helpful, let me know in the comments what part of literature review writing you struggle with the most. In the next video, I can talk about how to transition from the gap to your research questions smoothly and convincingly. Keep writing, keep refining, and always map the gap.